Hi there, this is Jeanette Comerford for Whimsy Stamps. Today we'll be creating a background using heat embossing and sponging. We'll be pairing it up with this image you see here, as well as some die cuts. The products that I used will be listed at the end of the video, and I'll include links below the video on YouTube. So these are the stamps we're going to be using. This is Little Flower, and the background stamp is called Life Defined. We'll also be using the stitched border dies and the Say What speech bubble dies. So I'm taking my piece of Neenah cardstock. I'm going to cut that in half. One half will be the card base, and this part I'm cutting in half again. When you get your rubber stamps, they are untrimmed, so you're going to need to take a pair of scissors like I have here and just trim the rubber down. So now I can stamp it. I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink to stamp that off. And during the coloration, what I'll do is I'll put some music on, and you can listen to that. And I have all the marker colors listed. They'll be at the top of the screen, so you'll know what markers I'm using. And at the end of that, I will come back and I'll explain how to create the rest of the card. Okay, so I'm back, and what I'm doing now is I'm trimming the image. I'm leaving a little bit of white right around the edges. That will make it sort of pop against the background a little bit, and it's easier to cut out all the really fine details. So now I have the other piece of Neenah cardstock. I am using my embossing tool. It's an anti-static tool, running that over the surface. And I'm taking the background stamp and I am putting Versamark all over it, making sure that I'm getting every little bit covered. And then I find it easier just to take my cardstock and position it on top and just make sure that I've got the whole thing pressed down on my stamp. So now I have white embossing powder, and I am going to run it along the top of the card, just sort of sprinkle it on and shake it off. And you just want to make sure that you cover just the whole surface and you get the edges as well. And just tap off the excess, and then clean off your mat so you don't get powder over everything else. And this is my heat tool, and I'm just going to slowly move it back and forth across the paper, and the embossing powder will melt. So the embossing powder is stuck to that Versamark, and now it's going to melt, and you will have the image of the stamp on your cardstock. Now I know it's really hard to see, you can't really see it because it's white on white, but once we start sponging you're going to see the detail. So then I just trimmed the edges just so that my image was perfectly straight. And now I have various inks. You can use whatever inks you want. I chose 3 that are, I've got like a nice dark blue here, and then sort of a medium aquamarine color, and then a light one. So you can see I'm just taking my, I'm forgetting the word, my sponge, and I'm just spreading the ink on top of the cardstock, and you can see how now the detail of the stamp is coming through. So I wanted to have the darkest part in the lower left hand corner, and then bring the color up towards the top right hand corner so that it'll be lighter there. So it's sort of a, I guess sort of an ombre look. So here's the lightest color I'm using now. And you can go back. I felt that there was too much of a line between the dark and the medium color, so I just sort of sponged at that a little bit more. And then just take a baby wipe and just wipe off the ink that's on the white. So this is the remaining part of that cardstock that we cut. I am now folding it in half. Because I trimmed the background stamp, the image, there is going to be a little bit of white around the edges, which is really nice. And I'm using Score-Pal tape. I'm using a strong adhesive so that it lays flat. So make sure that's stuck down real well. And then I took a piece of vellum. I cut it to be the same width of the card, and I will be now using those stitched border dies that I showed you at the beginning of the video. We'll be die cutting the vellum, so that it's going to create sort of like a landscape, but it's going to still let that beautiful background show through. So I have a magnetic platform that sort of makes my dies sort of stick better, and I was just making sure that the cutting line was at the top. You'll see if you look at the dies, there's the stitched line, and then the cutting line is a solid line. You want to make sure that you've positioned that the right way so that you cut what you want to cut. if that makes any sense. So now I'm just sort of figuring out exactly where I want the vellum to go. I'm going to have to trim it. So I'm just using a pencil and marking where I want to trim that vellum now. So now we're going to adhere the image and the vellum to the card. I like to hide the adhesive that I'm using on the vellum behind where the stamped image is. So I'll put the image on, I'll figure out exactly where it's sitting on the vellum, and then I'll put the adhesive right underneath that. So you'll watch what I'm doing and I think that'll make more sense. So that way my adhesive is hidden. For the second piece of vellum, I will adhere it to the image. You'll see I'm going to lift up where her legs are, her feet. I'll add a little bit of adhesive to that and then press the vellum onto it. And you'll see in a little bit how we adhere the other side. So I also cut out one of the speech bubbles from that set I showed you earlier. I cut it out in vellum. And these letters hello are also in the set. I cut those out with some white cardstock. And I'm just using my Zig Glue Pen and my Quik Stik just to position those down. And then I'll take my block and I'll just press it down to make sure everything is sticking well. And then I'll hide the adhesive, the glue, behind those letters. And again, I'll just take my block and press it down till it dries. So now we're just going to put some sequins on the card. I just sort of scatter them on the card and then move them around till they look nice. I'm going to adhere these sequins in the bottom, and then I'll lift up the vellum and I will put some glue behind where the sequins are, so that way my vellum is adhered to the card, but it's hidden behind those sequins. And then I'll just glue the rest of the sequins on. So the last thing I'm going to do after adhering the sequins is I'm just going to take a white gel pen and I'll just add that to the lace on her little apron and on her headband. And I will also add a few highlights, some dots in the flowers. And then my card will be done. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.